right, let's talk about Georgia. All eyes on Georgia. We got about a few weeks until the Georgia runoff election happens on January 5th. Of course, two candidates right now that were too close to call now be thrust into a recount. If it was less than 1% of the vote, they're thrust into a runoff. And while that's the backdrop in Georgia, those two Senate seats, which if that happens and Democrats pick up those two Senate seats, that would throw Mitch McConnell out of the leadership position, because the White House is controlled now by Democrats, and the tie-breaking vote in the Senate would fall to Kamala Harris as the Vice President of the United States. So technically, then Senator Schumer would become the majority leader. I'm still curious how that will all play out with a 50-50 Senate. But right now, William Barr last night dropped a bit of a bombshell. And that's why, so this is all tied together. So Bill Barr, the Attorney General, who's been a lackey for President Trump for quite a while, who has really politicized the Department of Justice in ways that we haven't seen before. We saw what he did with the Mueller investigation report in his summary version of the Mueller investigation. Really threw the Mueller investigation under the bus. And he drove that narrative on President Trump through at the end of the Mueller investigation. But he last night, I don't know, it looks like he threw the Trump sycophants some shade last night by coming out and announcing that there's no fraud. So here is how it went down yesterday. Breaking news on CNN. Watch this.
Bill Barr bails, deserting Trump on voter fraud. The Attorney General tonight says the Justice Department has uncovered no evidence of any fraud that would change the outcome of the election. Now, Bill Barr has been beyond loyal to Trump, beyond loyal. So this is a major and public shaming of his boss, who tonight continues to peddle his baseless conspiracy theories. Barr bailing now, telling the Associated Press, quote, "To date, we have not seen fraud on a scale that could have affected a different outcome in the election."
That's how it went down last night, sent shockwaves through. And then a few minutes later, we saw that Bill Barr was being summoned to the White House, and there's a lot of drama there. We don't know what unfolded last night. I thought, oh my God, he's about to be fired. This Trump loyalist is about to be fired. Not yet anyway. Anyway, here's how the Associated Press broke this story. Disputing President Donald Trump's persistent, baseless claims, Attorney General William Barr declared Tuesday the U.S. Justice Department has uncovered no evidence of widespread voter fraud that could change the outcome of the 2020 election. I guess it's refreshing to hear that, because I guess things like, everybody knows, or a lot of people are saying, or some guy told me doesn't actually hold up in a court of law when you're having to go in front of a judge and explain what you saw and that there was somehow widespread voter fraud. Turns out there wasn't. Or if there were individual little episodes of fraud here and there, which there always are in elections, it was not enough in Barr's mind to do anything to the election. Sad news for President Trump. Barr's comments in an interview with the Associated Press contradict the concerted effort by Trump, his boss, to subvert the results of last month's voting and block President-elect Joe Biden from taking place in the White House. Barr told the Associated Press that U.S. attorneys and FBI agents have been working to follow up on specific complaints and information that they've received. But to date, we have not seen fraud on a scale that could have affected a different outcome in the election. So it's amazing because the comments actually drew immediate criticism from Trump's attorneys. Were especially notable coming from Barr, who's been one of the president's most ardent allies in this entire fight. Before the election, he repeatedly raised the notion that mail-in ballot voting was going to be a problem, and that it was going to be rife with fraud, and it would be vulnerable to that. So the GOP, though, has a big problem now in Georgia, and this is how it all comes together. Because we have a lot of Republican voters that actually believe President Trump. They believe that the election was rigged. And so they've basically come out and said, you know what, we're not going to vote on January 5th in Georgia, because if it was rigged before, then we're not coming out and voting in Georgia this time, because if it's going to be rigged again, that's a problem. We're not going to do it. So right now you have the Republican Party basically shaking in its boots in Georgia almost hoping that the Trump administration will sort of walk back all of their baseless claims about fraud. Because now you have these two Georgia Republicans that are hoping to hang on and actually win their election. But if all these Republicans in Georgia are like, no, Trump told us it was rigged, we don't want to vote, they're not going to come out to the polls and vote. Why would we take part in this rigged process? So the Republican Party now is like, President Trump, please, can you get off this BS that you've been peddling? Because we're going to lose these two races in Georgia. It's the same thing that happened in Florida this summer. Do you remember this? We covered it here on the show when he was slamming mail-in voting, right? Saying it was going to be rife with fraud. And then he himself mail-in voted in the primary in Florida. And then the Republican Party in Florida said, please, President Trump, can you just not pick on mail-in voting? Because we actually need Republicans to vote by mail in Florida. Can you not do that? And then he sent out a series of tweets. He's like, mail-in voting is great. Mail-in voting is fantastic in Florida. It was hilarious. That's exactly what's happening now. All of these people are like, President Trump says the whole thing's rigged. Now they're going to stay home and not vote. In some ways, it's like natural selection. Don't you agree? But here was yesterday. I mean, some real crazy stuff happening in Georgia. Here yesterday is the one of the election officials, Gabriel Sterling. He couldn't really even keep it together yesterday on the microphone. So he's one of the election officials down there. And they've had it. They've had it by the fact that there's been a number of Republicans, the Secretary of State, the governor, that have said our election was safe and secure, even after recounts, even after hand recounts. Guess what? When you have the paper ballot that you match up with the electronic record, turns out it's pretty hard to throw that under the bus. And so now there have been death threats, all kinds of crazy things happening. And the election official, Gabriel Sterling, came out yesterday and said this.
Keep it together because it has all gone too far. All of it. Joe DeGenova today asked for Chris Krebs, a patriot who ran CISA, to be shot. A 20-something tech in Gwinnett County today has death threats and a noose put out saying he should be hung for treason because he was transferring a report on batches from an EMS to a county computer so he could read it. It has to stop. Mr. President, you have not condemned these actions or this language. Senators, you have not condemned this language or these actions. This has to stop. We need you to step up, and if you're going to take a position of leadership, show some. My boss, Secretary Raffensperger, his address is out there. They have people doing caravans in front of their house. They've had people come onto their property. Tricia, his wife of 40 years, is getting sexualized threats through her cell phone. It has to stop. This is elections. This is the backbone of democracy, and all of you who have not said a damn word are complicit in this. It's too much. Yes, fight for every legal vote. Go through your due process. We encourage you, use your First Amendment, that's fine. Death threats, physical threats, intimidation. It's too much. It's not right. They've lost the moral high ground to claim that it is. I don't have all the best words to do this because I'm angry. And the straw that broke the camel's back today is, again, this 20-year-old contractor for a voting system company just trying to do his job. His family's getting harassed now. There's a noose out there with his name on it. It's not right. I've got police protection outside my house. Fine. You know, I took a higher profile job. I get it. Secretary ran for office. His wife knew that too. This kid took a job. He just took a job. And it's just wrong. I can't begin to explain the level of anger I have right now over this. And every American, every Georgian, Republican and Democrat alike, should have that same level of anger. Mr. President, it looks like you likely lost the state of Georgia. We're investigating. There's always a possibility. I get it. And you have the rights to go through the courts. What you don't have the ability to do, and you need to step up and say this, is stop inspiring people to commit potential acts of violence. Someone's going to get hurt. Someone's going to get shot. Someone's going to get killed. And it's not right.
Wow. I'll applaud this guy. You should know his name, Gabriel Sterling, Georgia election official, speaking truth to power, saying, Mr. President, you lost Georgia. Come out and condemn these things. When someone hangs a noose on a 20-year-old's house who's just doing a job. When Chris Krebs, who worked at the Department of Homeland Security and came out and said this was the most secure election we've ever had, was doing his job. He was appointed by Bush, by the way. He's a Republican. Secretary of State, governor. Republicans. So that's what's happening in Georgia. And the Republicans have a big problem on their hands. Because how do they square that? How do they cross that T? What other metaphor? How do they thread that needle? They've been saying it's all corrupt without any evidence of it. By the way, overnight, another one of their lawsuits was tossed. They had actually won one of their lawsuits. They had two that they won. They have actually now lost one of those two. And they've lost 39 now. Because they have nothing. When they go into these courtrooms, they have nothing. Like, oh, that guy heard something. That guy saw something. Judge after judge after judge has thrown these things out. But you've got all these conspiracy theorists out there. I like a good conspiracy theory. Heck, I have a whole, YouTube channel on paranormal post stuff, right? I also like fact-based. And when you literally have instances of this guy saw one thing over here, yes, incidents always happen in these elections, but widespread national voter fraud, where someone literally came in and took over servers and every system and paper ballot. We created all kinds of phony, fake paper ballots. And okay. So anyway, they've got a big problem in Georgia, and Republicans, are not going to be turning out. At least that's what they're saying. Not going to be turning out to vote in Georgia if it's all rigged. Why would we participate in this system anymore? Okay, that's on you, I guess. I'm glad. Hey, Republicans, if you don't want to vote in Georgia, stay home. It'd be fantastic for Mitch McConnell to be thrown out of power. But if you do want to vote, get out there. Support your Republican candidates. Get out there. Keep Mitch McConnell in power so he can continue to screw you over, to do nothing for the American people, and just keep corporate interests at heart.